This is Mary with Rebecca Productions, and I'm here today with the owner of Rebecca Productions, Daniel Rehm, on the day of the release of his latest book, his third publication, The Troll Hunters. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does it feel to have 3 published books?
The same as it did to have 2 or 1. Well, the first 2. I don't think about the first 2 when I think about the last one.
How did it feel when you published your first book?
Yes, ask anybody, and they're all going to be like, "Oh, it's awesome, it's fun," but it's cool to have it in your hand, but it doesn't really count unless it's in other people's hands. So it's neat. Yay, we're published, but now let's get it out there. That's the part where you get excited about. You get excited when people read it, not when you have a box of them sitting on your table.
And what inspired you to write The Troll Hunters?
My main character, I always intended to be in the world that I put him in the Troll Hunters. I knew it couldn't happen in the last book, so I wrote another book to get him there.
And your main character is the hunter.
My main character is the hunter. I always, when I gave the speech about the last book, I talked about I set out to create a character that couldn't die, couldn't be killed, but I didn't want him to be, Jason or something ridiculous like that. So I always intended that once he passed the world that we live in and went into another world, that it was going to be an electronic universe. So I thought about that from day one, many, many years ago, before I even wrote the last 2 books.
The hunter, you said, passes out of our world and into another.
Yeah, I mean, the spoiler will be for the end of the last book. And let's face it, it's been well over a year. So if you haven't, like my neighbor Rick said, if you haven't read that book yet, if you can get to the end, then it's your fault if I spoiled it at this point. So yes, he passes into like a ghostly plane of existence, but he plays a role. He's not just some worthless ghost. He's not something that's just floating around. He has some power there.
In the Troll Hunters, he's in some other space.
He is. As a reader, you will figure out exactly where he is, but I don't want to just hand it to you right now, because you're like, ooh, I think you're like 4 or 5 chapters in before you figure out exactly where he is. And I want the reader to discover that on their own. But yes, he moves into, let's just say he moves into another plane of existence.
And all of your publications have a wide variety of characters. That's one thing that a lot of readers enjoy about Philippine Maximine and Let Flowers Be Flowers. And in this book, you have Daniel Navarro. What inspired that character?
I needed a guy that was bullied. I needed a guy that was smart, but all I could really do was what any writer probably does is they dig into what they know. So I got to thinking, it was like, what if this kid, this character that I pulled out of thin air, what if he lived in my neighborhood when he was a kid? What would he be like? What would his parents be like? What would it be like to have that family in my neighborhood as a kid? And I know damn well he'd been bullied out of his mind. So it became easy to write when I put him in that world.
Daniel Navarro launches a company called The Troll Hunters. Describe what that company does.
That company was initially designed to pretty much knock internet trolls off the internet. Now, of course, if they're good with computers and technology, they're going to be able to create a false persona and get right back on with another name and continue bullying people. as everybody knows, they're called trolls. So I wanted my company not just to knock out his access, but dox him if they have to, freeze his bank accounts, just electronically mess these people up once and for all. And of course, that's illegal. But in my story, we made it legal. We made it legal with the help from the U.S. government. They built him uh, uh, an unbelievable facility, and they saw so much potential in the programming that him and his partner Tyler had developed, that it was better than what the NSA had as far as learning about anybody that's connected to the internet. So they built him a facility that had unlimited power for cooling, for housing, and even from airstrikes.
And throughout the story, there's a mention of a hum. What's the source of that hum? Can you share that? Or is that something for the reader to explore?
The reader has to figure out what the hum is. And not as a spoiler, but in case they wonder throughout the book, am I ever going to know? Yes, you will know what the hum is, but you have to be paying attention. It's not like the answer is a whole dedicated chapter, but it's a short little blurb. And if you're paying attention, you'll figure out what the hum is. It's in there. As far as what inspired the hum, I will sound like a crazy person if I tell you, but why not? So every time, and I shouldn't even say the Boundary Waters, but it used to be when I was a kid and I was younger, I'd be going to the Boundary Waters with my friend Glenn, his dad. I lived in the city, of course, but when I got up in the wilderness up there, it just seemed like when it was dead quiet, instead of it being dead quiet for me, there was a hum. And it's a deep hum that you can't quite put your finger on. It's super low frequency, like it's a machine in the distance. You can hear it change pitch. You can hear it turn on and off. And sometimes when it's really quiet, it's so intense that it almost makes you feel nauseous. So after going up there so many times since the mid 80s, I've tried to put my finger on it. Is it the quietness? Is it the cloudy day? Is it a sunny day? Is the wind from this direction? Trying to put it all together, and it just doesn't matter. It's usually the worst at night, though. I will say that when you're laying there in the tent and it's dark and quiet, that's when it's really the most annoying. But I've been trying to figure out what this hum has been my whole life. And I'm not saying that's the hum in the book, but it's just a neat story to go from personal experience.
As readers read through the Troll Hunters, they will find multiple storylines, and a lot of the characters' stories eventually intersect in your books. It's been true for both of your other publications too.
Yeah, I do that because I think it's cool.
And in the Troll Hunters, one character that appears that was also in Philippine Maximine that I always found fascinating is Skeleton Man. So describe to me how the Skeleton Man, being in the state he is now or was, can intersect with the real world and the Troll Hunters, the company.
Well, the last time you saw Skeleton Man was chronologically many years before before the Troll Hunter takes place. So in that time, he has learned to hone his skills. Not just that, but there's characters. I mean, to get down to the root of it, there's characters out there that I really enjoy. And I hate to see them just go away because the book ended. sometimes they need to come back and, you know, come into another story. I didn't want Skeleton Man to go away, so I brought him back. It's fiction. Anything's possible. It's like writing a cartoon. I can make it happen if I want to make it happen. I just have to twist the story.
There is one scene in the Troll Hunters that stuck with me. And the way I read it, it seemed like a perfect example of how what we do on the internet intersects with our real lives and how online trolls can impact someone's actual life. And you have one character named Becky.
She's a troll.
Becky's a troll in the Troll Hunters. And there's a short passage where Becky is trolling another woman, and the other woman gets so angry, and as she's leaving her house, she backs up and hits a young woman jogging down the street.
Yeah, she rips out of her driveway. Forgive me, I forget some of the details sometimes because, you know, in a situation like this, I can only assume I wrote it to accentuate the fact that what happens in cyberspace has a huge effect on people and how they feel and their moods throughout the day. And if somebody's constantly getting bullied and constantly getting angry, well, a lot of people say, forget about it. Just turn the computer off or scroll on. But in this case, this woman was clearly annoyed, and she ended up, I think she killed somebody. And it was an accident. And no, she wasn't drunk. She wasn't high. She was angry. And she wasn't thinking clearly. And it was an accident, but that's the result of bullying. You hear about people all the time through internet bullying where kids commit suicide. And I believe I touch on that earlier in the book as well. That's it's a more than an unfortunate result. It's tragic that the kids just believe so much of what these rotten bullies say on the internet that they take their own lives. So it's in there just to accentuate the point that it's more serious for younger people than it is for older generations. You know, my mom wouldn't care what you said about her unless you said, what's the internet? You know, they don't care. They're not on social media. They don't give a shit. Why would they? In their day, if somebody said something and be like, oh, they said that? Well, next time I see them, I'm going to bring that up and we're going to talk about it. Nowadays, there's anonymity and a keyboard or a phone. People can say whatever they want. There's no repercussions. They're not going to get punched between the eyes anymore. It's never going to happen. So that's what Troll Hunters is about. It's like sometimes you just want to punch somebody in the face because they got it coming for what they said. So we'll have to do it electronically. There's got to be a new way to do it.
So that's really interesting. And when we think about your character, the hunter, one would assume by the title that he is the troll hunter, but that's not necessarily the case.
That is what we call a double entendre. But yes, the hunter of men is still the main character. He's still back there. But maybe he's not the main character anymore. But when I started writing it, I intended him to be the main character, but maybe he became a side character. You know, I'm not even 100% sure anymore. The spotlight is shared relatively evenly throughout the story between a handful of main characters. So I'll let the reader decide who the main character is. Let them decide who the protagonist and the antagonist is. Because now that I look back on it, it's a little bit fuzzy. But that's always the best part of at least for me as the writer, is to get a reader response, because it's always different. If 10 people can tell me what they thought of the book, and every one of them will be different. And that's one of the best parts for me, because probably not one of them is going to be exactly what I intended. Now, if you asked earlier, what's the difference between writing the first book and the third book, I learned that. I learned that at first, in my first book, people would say, well, this is what I thought. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I intended. And then someone else would be like, no, this is what I thought. I'm like, well, that's not what I intended either. And, at first, I'm not going to lie, it seemed a little bit offensive. But then I got to thinking, no, this is actually good. Which gets back to when I got my first really shitty review. I think it was Philippine Maximine. I was pretty pissed off for about an hour. And then I got to thinking about it. I'm like, wait a minute. This woman, the way she phrased her review, I'm like, that's good. That's good that I get a negative review, because I didn't write it for her. I didn't write it for somebody that speaks so shitty, that's so mean. I wrote it for somebody else. And if everybody liked it, that means it's cheap and it's generic. Grab that one off the shelf first. So, yeah, I don't mind getting a negative review now and then.
Another major character that shows up in the later part of the Troll Hunters is Francis Ulysses Truss. What role does he play in this book, The Troll Hunters, around eradicating trolls from the internet?
We needed a big target, or I shouldn't say we. I say it like we, like I was one of those troll hunters, but I needed a big target. I mean, sure, you can keep picking away at your little internet trolls forever, and you can get some sort of story out of that. But I needed an antagonist. Every story needs a protagonist and an antagonist. So I guess I needed somebody big to go after. So I picked a well-known internet scourge and decided that he would be a target in the story.
So I think that's where the Troll Hunters gets complicated. And
probably
this is where the stories intersect. And so for those of you that enjoy the supernatural side of your prior books, and also enjoy the page turning storylines in your books, that's where it'll get exciting. And from there, there's all sorts of other characters that show up and reappear.
It gets exciting. It gets faster because of where it was written, in my opinion, rather than the story. I mean, the story happens. And a certain percentage of this book, I'm not even sure, was written while I sat in the bookstore trying to sell books. And it was like pulling teeth writing that section of the book. Might have been 40% of it. Now, it was harder because I was bored. There was nothing exciting going on. I'd get up and I'd make my lunch. I'd go to work out and make my lunch. I'd go to the bookstore. I'd sit there all day, take care of 2, 3 customers if I was lucky, and I'd come home with my little lunchbox like Hermit Munster and, make dinner and go on with life. I'm like, this sucks. And I felt like it reflected in my writing. And I recognized that at the time. So I tried to throw in things that made it more exciting. And, the same thing happened to me in Philippine Maximine. I don't know if anyone's read that book, but I threw a mountain lion in that book out of nowhere because I'm like, I need something to just stir the pot. And even when I'm talking to my wife about, what did you do today, honey? Or what did you write today? She never asked, but I tell her anyways. I'm like, I have to come up with a mountain lion today, Mary. I said, I need to throw one into the story. So that whole middle of the book where before it just picks up and starts running, there's a lot of individual storylines that start, a lot of ideas, and I had to eventually get to a place where I rolled them all together. And that's why it seems like the story picks up and gets faster, because everything just starts coming together. And I've often said that things just come together on their own. I can float a styrofoam cooler of ideas out there, and it's eventually going to get to the picnic on the other side of the lake. It just gets there and it does it on its own. And if you think too hard about it, well, sometimes the best remedy is just to have a couple of beers. And people have seen it in me. I'll grab a piece of cardboard and tear it off the box and write 3 or 4 things on it, a magic marker that sits on the table. 2 days later, that's a half a chapter. And now I'm rambling.
As the owner of a publishing company, it was established to publish your works, but now there's other writers who are coming and requesting for help and support and assistance. And a lot of authors and writers are asked by new writers how they did it and what advice they can have. Where do you feel your role is with these new writers? Do you feel like you can offer them any advice?
Maybe, but it would be it, it, it would depend on what they ask me, of course. But I don't know how much help I could be, because the way I do things is most likely not how most writers, I would assume, do things. I mean, I come up with a lot of my ideas after a couple of beers. I scribble down on notes. I have no plan. I just expect that the story is going to get there when it gets there. And sometimes I stall for 2 weeks, and then I write a whole bunch, and then I stall for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. And I don't consider it writer's block. It's just, I don't know. I never considered writer's block to be a thing. It's just like I'm just not feeling it. I just don't feel like doing it. That's more like it. Writers are great procrastinators. We clean the whole damn house before we write a chapter. I tried to get to an idea where I wanted to write a chapter a week, which I kept between around 2,000, 2,500 words, but good words, not junk. So I'd start that on Monday, and I probably wouldn't really write it until Thursday. And then on Friday, I'd look it over and make any corrections, and boom, I'd throw it in. So yeah, no, I didn't do things in a way that I would probably expect anybody else to succeed using my method. So I don't know what kind of advice I could offer, except to, all right, if I had to offer any advice, I'd be like, don't listen to people that tell you things are a certain way. You have to do it this way because it's a rule. If you're creative in what you write, just do it the way you want to do it. If it sings, if it works, if the story works, then you did it right.
At what point in your writing career did you feel confident as a writer?
I don't know if I ever feel fully confident as a writer, but something I learned a long time ago, and I've said it in the past, you have to have the balls to hit send. You have to look at it and go, if I want to edit it and keep getting it better and better until I think that I've got the next Moby Dick on my desk, well, then you're never going to hit send. You're never going to get it done. At some point, you've got to decide that was good. That was good. Hey, shit, I wrote that, and that was pretty good. All right, I'm gonna leave that in there, and I'm gonna move on to the next thing. You just have to have some confidence in yourself.
One thing I really enjoy hearing from people is their career story. How would you describe your career? How you got to where you are now?
Well, I went from a desire of making money to a desire of being happy and making no damn money. So now I'm there.
So that's really interesting, because your bio at the end of, I believe, Philippine Maximine said something about you eating bologna sandwiches
Bologna's good. I like bologna.
In a cardboard box, maybe, and something about
Wasn't that a Christmas letter that we sent?
because nobody reads anyways because of the political situation. This is during the Philippine Maximine time.
Really? I said that?
That's what I
You
recall.
must have been saving this for like the interview.
And now the ending of your bio for the Troll Hunters. Dan launched Rebecca Productions in 2020 to publish his work and vowed to never sell another gallon of paint as long as he lived.
Yes, this is true.
Do you feel like you're past the bologna sandwiches?
Yes, but I'm also not selling paint, so that's good.
Success.
Success. I made it. Not selling another damn gallon of paint.
Nice. Well, thank you for your time, and we hope the readers enjoy the Troll Hunters.
Oh, well.
Congratulations on your third publication, and we'll look forward to your next.
Thanks. I feel like it stands alone in case they hadn't read the other two books. It was designed to do that. But if you do read the first two, you'll probably enjoy this one just a little bit more.